Okay, we're online, I think. Alright. Hello everyone, this is the 5th Ethical Revelation Fellowship. I'm Reverend Dr. Roger Paul. I'm here with my wife, Reverend Diane Paul. And tonight we're going to study paper 53, the Lucifer Rebellion, and that starts on page 601 in the original Urantia book, or paper 5301 in the newer books. And let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight. Please be with us as we study this very important paper, and be with us on the next one too. It's just as important. About the Lucifer Rebellion. You try to do your will and study this and understand what happened and why it happened, and try to avoid falling in the same pitfalls. We thank you and we give you the praise in your Son Jesus of Nazareth, Michael Nebadon's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, let's get started. The Lucifer Rebellion. Diane, would you like to start out on the first
Okay.
paragraph?
The Lucifer Rebellion. Lucifer was a brilliant primary Lenonondic son of Nebadon. He had experienced service in many systems, had been a high counselor of his group, and was distinguished for wisdom, sagacity, and efficiency. Lucifer was number 37 of his order, and when commissioned by the Melchizedeks, he was designated as one of the 100 most able and brilliant personalities in more than 700,000 of his kind. From such a magnificent beginning, through evil and error, he embraced sin and now is numbered as one of the 3 system sovereigns of Nebadon, who have succumbed to the urge of self and surrendered to the sophistry of spurious personal liberty, rejection of universal allegiance, and disregard of fraternal obligations, blindness to cosmic relationships.
All right, so they start us right off the bat with how brilliant Lucifer was, and how he was distinguished in his past workings before he rebelled. And he had been basically working in several of the systems before this happened. And they felt like he was one of the best of the 700,000 of his kind, too. And then they go on to tell us he succumbed to the urge of self and surrendered to the sophistry of spurious personal liberty and the rejection of the universal allegiance. Now, in the next paper, paper 54, it goes into great detail about this self-assertion and this idea of freedom and that sort of thing. I'm not going to cover a lot of that tonight. We're going to just cover basically what happened during in the rebellion and during the rebellion, and the paper after this goes into great detail about breaking down what Lucifer was trying to cause and why it was bad for the entire universe. So let's keep going.
Roger, hey
yeah.
Roger.
Yeah.
I had a question. What does the word sagacity mean?
Here, used in this, in other words, he felt like his, how do I say this? He felt like his opinion was more important than anybody else's. That's what they consider sagacity.
Well, could I read you something on the word sin and see if you agree with it?
Yeah.
It says, sin is something we do consciously and deliberately and reflect the hostility towards God. Would you agree with that?
Yes. According to the definitions of sin of the Urantia book. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Hey, Roger, I had a question.
Right.
You stated that he was a brilliant personality. He still is, isn't he?
Yeah, he's well, that's debatable, I would say at this point, Roddy, because if he is so brilliant, he would not fall into this self-egotistic pushing himself up. So, in essence, he's let himself and his ego become so important, he's actually become cosmically what I would call insane. because when you think of yourself and your place in the cosmos, when you put yourself above all other beings and set yourself up as leader of something you know you're not the leader of, I would call that cosmic insanity, right? And that's why I would say that. Now let me add to a statement I just made about sin too. When Tim asked me about sin, the reason I said that's true is this, Tim, because you have to know you're sinning to make it a sin. In other words, a rebellion against God, you have to know you're rebelling against God. If not, you're caught up in error. It doesn't become sin until you realize that it's not God's will and you still do it. Okay? So that's why I said that.
Let me just read you one more thing. It takes page on page 52, Roger.
Yeah.
And it just says the possibility of mistaken judgment, evil,
Yeah.
becomes sin only when the human will consciously endorses and knowingly embraces a
That's right.
deliberate, immoral judgment. And that's on page 52.
Yeah, that's the point where sin, where error turns into sin, right? Yeah. Because we know there is really only one sin, and that's rebellion against God, right, in His plan. So, okay, so let's keep going.
Roger, one question.
Huh?
One more question here,
Yeah.
or statement. The word brilliant, it is talking about wisdom, brain power,
Yeah, intelligence, really.
intelligence, not physically blind.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I would say charisma. He must have had extremely rich charisma to have influenced so many entities.
Yeah, that's right. And keep in mind, before this time, he was considered what they say here, wise, sagacity, and efficient, right? So he was considered very forceful and a very good leader up to this point, right? And he was distinguished for those points. And the problem is he let it get out of hand and let the ego get the better of him.
And
So, hey,
Michael
go ahead.
created him, right?
Pardon me?
Michael created him.
He created him, that's correct.
So, hey, Diane, when you say the word charisma, that's just another way of saying influence?
Yeah, that you influence a vast majority of people because you are so effective in your articulation of what you believe to be true. You know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And he was created along with, however many others of his order.
700,000.
I wonder how he became to stand out, more than them.
Well, because he served in other local systems.
And
Okay.
because he had such a brilliant
Yeah.
personality.
Yeah, he didn't start out in our system. He worked in many other systems before he came to our system.
So from experience.
From experience, that's right. In this slide it says, and this is from 601, he experienced service in many systems, had been high counselor of his group, and was distinguished for his wisdom, sagacity, and efficiency. And he was number 37 of his order, so he was created rather early in his order, and was commissioned by the Melchizedek when he is designated as one of the 100 most able and brilliant personalities of more than 700,000 of his kind.
There it is.
So he was considered very high, Okay, and this slide tells us that the primary one. I just wanted to remind y'all where these orders fit in. The primary Lenonondecs were the system sovereigns, right? Both him and Satan were primary Lenonondecs, even though Satan had never been in charge of a system. And the secondary Lenonondecs were the orders that served as planetary princes, right? The tertiary Lenonondecs, were assistants, messengers, custodians, commissioners, observers, and prosecute the miscellaneous duties of the system and its component worlds. So that's where these beings fit in together here. Okay? All right. Millie, would you take the next one, please?
Yes. In the universe of Nebadon, the domain of Christ Michael, there are 10,000 systems of inhabited worlds. In all the history of the Namandek sons, in all their work throughout these thousands of systems, and at the universe headquarters, only 3 system sovereigns have ever been found in contempt of the government of the Creator Son.
Okay, so only 3 times has this happened, right? Lucifer being one of them, and there were 2 others before Lucifer rebelled. So there was,
Hey, Roger.
yeah.
These two others,
I'm sorry, I'll
these two
talk.
other system sovereigns.
I'm
Were
sorry.
they on Lanatech also?
Yes, they were. All of them are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What did you say, Millie? Millie?
Yes, in our universe, only 3 in our universe, or in all of the universes?
In this only 3 in the local universe. So only 3 within the purview of Michael, right? 2 of them happened before he finished his 7th bestowal, which is when he came to Earth, right? And the 3rd one happened right before he came to Earth, right? Which was the Lucifer rebellion. The Lucifer rebellion started about 200,000 years ago. Okay, that's when all the trouble started. But there were 2 previous rebellions before this time. This was earlier in his career of being the considered the creator son of the local universe, and he was the representative of the Father rather than the sovereign of the local universe during that period of time. Now he's considered the sovereign of the local universe, right? Which changes things. And we're going to get to that slide in just a minute.
Thank you for that.
Sure. Tim, would you take the next one? The leaders of the rebellion?
1. The leaders of the rebellion. Lucifer was not an ascendant being. He was a created son of the local universe. And of him it was said, "You were perfect in all your ways. From the day you were created till unrighteousness was found in you." Many times had he been in council with the Most High Sabbatentia, and Lucifer reigned upon the holy mountain of God, the administrative mount of Jerusalem, for he was the chief executive of a great system of 607 inhabited worlds.
Now this was before. Was before the trouble started. Now we know that there's 619 inhabited worlds. So there's been another another 11 or 12 since then. Okay. The important part of this paragraph is it mentions here that Lucifer was not an ascendant being. What's an ascendant being?
A will creature like us.
That's right, a will creature like us. Someone that's come up from human and worked their way up the ranks, right? He was created as a Lenanandek son for the specific job that he had, which would be a system sovereign, right? So he was created for the job that he had. Okay, and then it goes on to tell us he'd been in the Council of the Most Highs, which is what? The Verandadek sons in Adentia. That's our constellation headquarters. And he reigned upon the holy mountain of God. And this is on Jerusalem. This is the head of the administrative division of our system. Okay? And he was considered the chief executive of our entire local system, which at that time was 607 inhabited worlds, but now is 619. Okay.
So hey Roger.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the other 2 system sovereigns, these categories are completely different from his associates, Lucifer's associates, like Caligastia and Satan.
Yeah, Caligastia is a secondary Lenanandek.
And so is Satan too, right?
Satan is a primary Lenanandek, just like Lucifer. He had just never been assigned to a system as the head of a system.
I
Okay.
have a question.
Yeah.
How many years since the rebellion?
200,000 years.
In 200,000 years, 17 or 12 more universes became inhabited.
12 more planets became inhabited. That's correct.
In that amount of time.
That's right.
200,000 years for 12 new inhabited worlds.
That's right. Now, when we talk about inhabited worlds, they're all more than likely starting out at the very basic level. In other words, they've been evolving for some time, and they just got to the point where they actually have primitive humans on them to be called
Will
inhabited.
creatures.
Huh?
Will creatures.
Will creatures like Endon and Fanta, right?
That's when they decide that these are humans. We work with them. They have will.
That's right. That's right.
So that's an inhabited world.
So that's considered an
200,000
inhabited.
years for 12 more inhabited worlds.
That's right. And it might take another, million years before all the planets are inhabited in our local universe, right?
And the term will creature just refers to a personality endowed with free will.
That makes moral choices. Okay.
Personality endowed with free will. Yeah, it's in the last paper we read.
Yeah,
52.
yeah.
I gave Millie an explanation of it.
Yeah,
I completely lost my thought of train. Sorry.
they're capable of recognizing a higher source than them, like a deity. And
Yeah, free will and personality.
that's right. That's right. Okay, let's keep going. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Surely. Lucifer was a magnificent being, a brilliant personality. He stood next to the Most High Fathers of the constellations in the direct line of universal authority. Notwithstanding Lucifer's transgression, subordinate intelligences refrained from showing him disrespect and disdain prior to Michael's bestowal on Urantia. Even the archangel of Michael, at the time of Moses' resurrection, did not bring against him an accusing judgment, but simply said, "The judge rebuke you." Judgment in such matters belongs to the ancients of days, the rulers of the super universe.
So all the beings up until the time of Michael's bestowal on Urantia still gave him the respect that he expected, right? Because he was still considered on the level of a system sovereign, right? So until Michael finished his bestowal and Satan and Lucifer were taken away in change for the judgment and taken to the Father's prison world, no one disrespected them, right?
So basically in this verse, Roger, it's just talking about how his subordinate intelligences, that would be, let's say, some of the associates next to him, refrain from showing him disrespect.
That's right. All orders of beings below him still gave him respect, which he deserved at that time.
And what does the word transgression mean?
Transgression, where's it at in this paragraph?
It says Lucifer's transgression subordinate intelligences.
Okay, Lucifer's in other words, his rebellion against God.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Because they knew the natural process of the Ancients of Days would be the judge.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
judgment would have been made.
So until they actually had a verdict on him, they would continue, being respectful, which would be hard to do.
It would be, yeah.
But was he above the Ancients of Days?
The Lord, no. He was,
I didn't think so.
no, he's a local universe created son, okay, created by Michael and created Mother Spirit. So he's not even on the paradise level of sonship. The Ancients of Days are one of the 7 levels
Super universe.
of divinity, and he's not even in line for that. So, okay.
I don't have a dictionary right here, but he asked about transgression. Trans means across. So it was anti to what was supposed to be being done. And that's the word transgression.
Yeah.
Lucifer's transgression was denying God.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was his transgression. But transgression itself means to be opposed to something.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Millie.
Okay, I think.
You can look that up in your dictionary.
Am I next?
I don't have one.
I think I'm next. Lucifer is now the fallen and deposed sovereign of Satania. Self-contemplation is most disastrous even to the exalted personalities of the celestial world. Of Lucifer it was said, "Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom because of your brightness." Your olden prophet saw this sad estate when he wrote, "Who are you, fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How are you cast down, and you who dared to confuse the worlds?" Okay, self-contemplation is most disastrous. Do y'all see that? This is the whole problem with Lucifer. He let his own ego and his own beauty and what he considered his own wisdom to override what he knew to be true. Okay? It's common sense.
So when you think about it, he knew that God did exist, the universal father, but yet he was just plain stupid, because a lot of people say that he was the first atheist,
Yeah.
but yet he did know of the existence of the universal father.
His whole argument was illogical, Tim, because he acknowledged Christ Michael as his creator father, but he disallowed Michael's father and the eternal son as being real. So how did Michael become created if he wasn't
Correct.
real? You know?
And he was also charging Michael about pretty much running the local universes. That's what he was also against.
Yeah.
That they invented the universal father. So it's safe to say that he was the first atheist in terms.
Well, not really, because I'm sure he knew that God existed. He just denied his existence, right?
That's what an atheist does.
That's what an atheist does too. But
Okay, thank you.
yeah, it's not the same as an agnostic, that doesn't know.
I have a note here in this area. Jude, out of the Bible, one of the very last books in the Bible, verses 1 through 9. I'm stressed about it because it speaks of, yet Michael the archangel when contending with the devil. Now, they're saying Michael the archangel. Our Michael is not an archangel.
No. What it should have said was the archangel of Michael. Yeah.
And that's what it says.
And do you know where that comes from? The reason why they say the archangel of Michael, because the very archangel was at the time of his resurrection inside the tomb. It was the archangel of Michael that was inside the tomb when he was being resurrected on that day.
And
that pretty much watched over him or was there.
yeah, they don't give the name of the archangel. They say it's an archangel of Michael, right? And that's where the confusion comes in.
But you can use that to say, well, the archangel was at the tomb at the time when he resurrected.
Well, the later scholars just assumed that Michael was the name of the archangel, right?
I probably made this note when we were still meeting at Ticky's house.
Yeah.
And they weren't so tightly wrapped sometimes.
Yeah.
They didn't clarify that.
Yeah.
I just wrote down here Jude 1 to 9, and when I read Jude 1 to 9, I said, "Oh, wait a minute."
Yeah. I had
patience too, Millie.
I had heard a discussion about
I
that
have the
once
same
before.
notation in my book from Ticky's house.
Okay.
Okay, let's keep going. Diane, would you read the next one, please?
Is Dustin joining us today?
I don't see him. Is
Oh,
he?
Yeah, he's here.
Oh, is he? Well.
Yeah, I thought he was.
Oh, okay. Would he like to read next then?
Sure.
Lucifer is now the fallen and deposed sovereign of Satania. We just read that, didn't we?
Yeah, it's the next one. Very little was hurt.
Very little was heard of Lucifer on Urantia, owing to the fact that he assigned his first lieutenant, Satan, to advocate his cause on your planet. Satan was a member of the same primary group of Lanodex, but had never functioned as a system sovereign. He entered fully into the Lucifer insurrection. The devil is none other than Caligastia, the deposed planetary prince of Urantia, and a son of the secondary order of Lanodex.
The non-index. The non-index.
Okay. Michael was on Urantia at the time. At the time, Michael was on Urantia in the flesh. Lucifer, Satan, and Caligastia were leagued together to effect the miscarriage of his bestowal mission, but they signally failed.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so the reason there's not much about Lucifer in the older New Testament, because there wasn't as much known about Lucifer as the actions of Satan and Caligastia, right? And Caligastia was just called the devil, right? And in the Old Testament, they're constantly confusing Lucifer, Satan, and Caligastia as the same person, as the devil, right? But the devil, as we knew it, and what being referred to was Caligastia, okay? So it's important to keep these beings straight. The other importance here is during the time of Michael, when he went up to the mountain and struggled with them, it was against Lucifer, Satan, and Caligastia. Okay, all three of them were leagued together to bring his bestowal to an end.
Okay, Roger.
Yeah.
Some scholars, you can be challenged on the name or the word Lucifer, referring to the Babylonian king, and they deny the existence that there ever was a Lucifer. Their whole commentary is based on, it was a reference that the Hebrews were writing to the Babylonian king.
Yeah, well that's
But
not,
that's,
it's not true. We know that,
we
right?
know better.
Okay, now I lost my train of thought. I had something else to say about this. Oh, Lucifer, Satan, and Caligastia were trying to stop the bestowal mission of Michael, because if they could do that during his time in the flesh, then he would not earn his sovereignty of the local universe. So it was important for Michael to stay on track against these three beings all the way through his physical life on the planet, all the way until he completely finished his bestowal. And we know that he finished his bestowal part before he died, but until he gave up his life, the bestowal was not complete. You understand the difference there? So that's why they leagued together and tried to cause the miscarriage of the bestowal mission. And if he did not finish the bestowal mission, he wouldn't be declared as sovereign of our universe. And that's
And when
very
you say
important.
sovereign, you're talking about power?
Complete power of and glory of this universe. That's right.
Okay.
Because up until he finished this, he ruled as a vicegerent of the universal Father. Okay, and that's important to know. Just as Melchizedek rules our planet as the vicegerent of Michael. He's considered our vicegerent planetary prince right now. But he rules in the name of Michael. So Michael was ruling his local universe in the name of the universal Father. Okay?
Hey, Roger, you just said the vicegerent.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Lucifer?
No, we're talking about Michael.
Michael, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michael was ruling as the vicegerent of the universal Father up until he finished his bestowal. And at that point, he was sovereign of our local universe by his own right. Okay? And that's important to know that, because up until that time, he could not claim all power and glory in his local universe, right? All right.
Hey, Roger,
Yeah.
Okay, perhaps you could clarify the name Beelzebub?
Lord of the Flies.
And Amandon?
Yeah.
Okay, Amandon was the head of the rebel Calagasta staff. Okay, in other words, he was part of Calagasta's staff. Beelzebub was the chief of the Midwayers, and he was the one that went into rebellion and led all the Midwayers into rebellion.
Ah, okay.
Okay, and we're going to get to a slide about Amandon in a minute. Okay. This is a slide that shows Lucifer as a primary linear deck and where he was at the time and the 607 inhabited planets. It also shows Satan. See, Lucifer assigned his first lieutenant Satan to advocate his cause on Urantia. Satan also was a primary linear deck, but had never served as a system sovereign. Okay? Calagasta, the devil is none other than Calagasta, now deposed planetary prince of Urantia, a Lenonondeck sun number 9,344 of the secondary order. Okay, and that's where they stood in the universe when they went into the rebellion. Okay, and the next slide, there it is. Let's see who's up. Diane, I think you're right.
Okay. Abaddon was the chief of the staff of Caligastia. He followed his master into rebellion and has ever since acted as chief executive of the Urantia rebels. I have a hard time saying this word.
Beelzebub.
Beelzebub was the leader of the disloyal Midway creatures who allied themselves with the forces of the Chatorius Caligastia.
Okay, and that's where everybody stood.
Hey Roger, I had a question.
Yeah.
So Amadon is the bad guy, and he still is.
Yeah, he was a bad guy. Now, he was part of Calagasta's staff, right?
Correct, but he's still bad though, right? Because he went in to follow his master.
He's still bad. Now, at the writing of the book, Calagasta was still free on the planet, right? We don't know at this point whether he's gone with Calagasta and Abaddon and all of them being gone, because it does say in this particular paper that that the hearings has started for the rebellion beings when the paper was being written, and they were being interned soon as their case comes up of Gabriel versus Lucifer.
So the only information we have on Abaddon is right here. That's it. We don't know
That's it.
if he's still on the planet or if
We don't know
he got
for
caught. Or
We don't
he's in
know for
prison.
sure, but we do know that Beelzebub and all the rebel Midwayers are gone.
Correct.
They were taken away when? At Pentecost, right? All the rebel Midwayers were taken away at Pentecost. We know that. But they do not tell us whether when the hearing started, Calagasta was taken away along with Abaddon and the rest of his staff or not, right?
Hey Roger, you don't know what that word Pentecost means. I know Penta's 5, like pentagram.
Yeah.
But I wonder what cost means. What's that translated to?
I couldn't give you the...
Is that a Greek word or?
Yeah, no, it's Latin, I think.
It's Latin?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Alright. Let's see, Millie, I believe you're next.
Okay, turn the microphone. The dragon eventually became the symbolic representation of all these evil personages. Upon the triumph of Michael, Gabriel came down from Salvington and bound the dragon. All leaders for one age of the Jerusalem seraphic rebels, it is written, and the angels who kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he reserved in sure chains of darkness to the judgment of the great day.
Oh.
He has reserved in sure chains.
That's right. Now, keep in mind, they're talking about Gabriel was in charge of all the angels, right? And so he ordered all the angels from Salvington down, that rebelled into, were taken to the Father's planet and put in chains, right? So all the angels that rebelled were taken away at the same time. Okay, now the other interesting thing about this I want to mention is, number one, they say the dragon became the symbol of the representation of these evil personages. Two things. Number one, does that mean that dragons really existed? Good question. It must have, because they're a representation of these beings, right? And the other thing is, how many times have y'all seen people walking around with tattoos with dragons on them? Would you want one of those?
Hey, Roger, would you believe that that could just be a symbolic kind of form of evil?
It may be. You know, it's a good question. I can't say for sure. You know, I'm sure that people that had these things put on them didn't think so at the time.
That's out of the book of Revelations, correct?
Yeah, that's out of the book of Revelations also. But I would not want to assume that I would do something rebellious like
Hey,
that.
Roger, I've got the answer that you're looking for right now. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
This is out of the Aramaic. It's called the dragon. Revelations chapter 12, verse 13 through 15. It says, the dragon is symbolical of earthly power, opposition, and enmity. How about that?
That's
Pagan
interesting.
rulers from the very beginning were cognizant of the growth of the Christian church and its influence on their people.
Well, I'm sure
I'm not
that's
going to go into it, but I'm just going to tell you that it just basically says earthly power, opposition, and enmity, whatever enmity means.
Well, I'm sure it's a leftover from the early part of the rebellion.
Absolutely.
You know, more than likely. So.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting. So we know that all the angels that rebelled, the seraphic beings, were taken away and put in chains. So the more you read this, the more you get assumptions that almost all the rebellious creatures that were involved with this are probably in chains waiting for judgment now. You know?
This says of the Jerusalem seraphic rebels.
That's right.
Jerusalem is the headquarters of our
That's right.
universe. There were rebels on our headquarters too.
Yes.
The thing is, the angels lost their first estate, which,
Yeah.
I don't know, was that in Jerusalem?
That was in Jerusalem. That's where they
left their own habitation.
That's right. Yeah, that's where they lived,
leave their
right?
estate to
Right.
go to be put into chains and
It-
to darkness.
It was from Jerusalem that they were assigned out to different planets and that sort of thing, right? So they left their first habitation, and they left their first estate. And so when Gabriel made the decisions to lock them all away to wait for judgment, they did them all simultaneously at the same time, right?
I hope some of them were remorseful and were saved.
Well, they said some of them, many of the beings that rebelled repented, but we don't know what the outcome of that repentance is yet until the Ancients of Days makes their adjudication, right? So, you know, everybody thinks that they will be saved and be rehabilitated for other jobs, but there's no way to know that for sure, right? It's really the decision of the Ancients of Days. Yeah, and what makes you really nervous is at the end of this paper, or it may be the next one, it states that the wages of sin is death. That's great, as much as you can say. All right, so let's keep going. Tim, would you take the next one, the cause of the rebellion?
2. The cause of rebellion. Lucifer and his first assistant Satan had reigned on Jerusalem for more than 500,000 years. When in their hearts they began to array themselves against the universal Father and his then vicegerent son, Michael.
Okay, so now we understand that paragraph, right? Because we know that at that point, Michael was still the vicegerent representation of the universal Father, right? But they had ruled on Jerusalem for more than 500,000 years before this all happened. So they had a lot of experience, right? All right. Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
Sure. There were no particular or special conditions.
Peculiar.
Peculiar.
Thank you. There were no peculiar or special conditions in the system of Satania which suggested or favored rebellion. It is our belief that the idea took origin and form in Lucifer's mind, and that he might have instigated such a rebellion no matter where he might have been stationed. Lucifer first announced his plans to Satan, but it required several months to corrupt the mind of his able and brilliant associate. However, when once converted to the rebel theories, he became an old and earnest advocate of self-assertion and liberty.
Okay, remember the self-assertion and liberty is really what? Self-ego and non-control, right?
ISIS. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hey Roger, self-assertion is referring to ego and liberty. I thought that was the word that meant freedom.
It normally means freedom, but what they actually are doing, they're replacing liberty with their will instead of the Father's will. You see that? You're going to see that more in the next paper. It goes into great detail about this.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Dustin, would you take the next one, please? Oh, yeah.
No one ever suggested rebellion to Lucifer. The idea of self-assertion in opposition to the will of Michael and to the plans of the Universal Father, as they are represented in Michael, had its origin in his own mind. His relations with the Creator's Son had been intimate and always cordial.
Yeah.
At no time prior to the exaltation of his own mind did Lucifer openly express dissatisfaction about the universe administration. Notwithstanding his silence for more than 100 years of standard time, the union of days on Salvington had been reflectivating to versa that all was not at peace in Lucifer's mind. This information was also communicated to the Creator Son and the constellation fathers of
Norlashadek. Yeah. Okay, so remember, the union of days is whom? The representation of the Trinity, right? An observer. So he, by reflectivity, relays to Uversa, to the Ancients of Days, that there's a problem in Lucifer's mind. And he also communicated this to the Creator Son and the constellation fathers. So they all had been notified that Lucifer had a problem, okay? And that if something was not done, that Lucifer would probably default, okay? And that's exactly what happened. So they also tell us here that the whole concept of the rebellion and this whole thing about self-assertion and liberty actually originated in Lucifer's own mind. Nobody else's. Nobody taught it to him. He didn't get it from anybody else. It came out of his own mind, his own ego. Okay?
Question, Roger.
Yeah.
What, they knew that he had a problem and he might rebel. What could they have done to change his mind?
I'm not sure there is a lot they could have done, Millie. They may have counseled him and tried to get him straightened out a little bit in kind of a nonchalant way, but I think it gets to the point, because of free will, we all have choices that we can follow, right? And I don't think they would be allowed to circumvent what actually happened in the Lucifer rebellion.
Hey Roger,
Yeah.
what does the word cardinal mean?
Cordial. In other words, he was very friendly and considered him a confidant and friend.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It also means a chocolate-covered cherry.
Yeah, it means that too. Christmas time coming up, so we'll have some cordials then. All right. This is a picture of, it just explains that the idea of rebellion was in the mind of Lucifer, and the idea of self-assertion in opposition to the will of Michael and the plans of the Universal Father as they are represented in Michael had its origin in his own mind. Do y'all see what's happened here? He put his self-assertion, put his own ego in the place of the will of Michael and the will of the Universal Father as represented in Michael, right? So he's discounting the Universal Father and discounting the whole Creator-Son system all the way around, okay?
The whole divine plan.
Whole divine plan, that's right. All right. Let's see, I think I'm up. Dustin just read, right? Alright, so I'm up. Throughout this period, Lucifer became increasingly critical of the entire plan of the universe administration, but always professed wholehearted loyalty to the supreme rulers. His first outspoken disloyalty was manifested on the occasion of a visit of Gabriel to Jerusalem, just a few days before the open proclamation of the Lucifer Declaration of Liberty. Gabriel was so profoundly impressed with the certainty of the impending outbreak that he went directly to Adentia to confer with the constellation fathers regarding the measures to be employed in case of open rebellion. Now, why would he do this? Because Gabriel is the chief executive of our local universe, right? So he immediately went to the constellation fathers and let them know what they were supposed to do in case rebellion happened, right? So he basically counseled them on the proper procedure as to what was to happen, okay? And that procedure turned out to be non-interference, which is kind of interesting. Michael,
hey, Roger,
yeah.
is the super universe, hold on, I just lost my place. Super universe rulers, the ancients of days?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Go on. Diane, would you take the next one?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Lucifer was quietly dishonest for so many years, and that was just growing inside him, which with the ascension plan, we're always growing towards the truth and towards obedience and doing God's will. So because he wasn't an ascension being, and he kept it to himself and was growing in that way.
Yeah.
Like,
He probably kept talking himself more and more and more into it, don't you think, Diane? In other words, the more he talked to himself, the more he convinced himself he was right, right?
right.
That was well said, Diana.
Yeah.
Good insight, Diane.
Yeah.
And you know what? This almost parallels what Jude did with Jesus. He kept it in himself for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Judas,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
similar.
Yeah, it was. Okay, Diane, would you take the next one?
It is very difficult to point out the exact cause or causes which finally culminated in the Lucifer rebellion. We are certain of only one thing, and that is, whatever these first beginnings were, they had their origin in Lucifer's mind. There must have been a pride of self that nourished itself to the point of self-deception, so that Lucifer for a time really persuaded himself that his contemplation of rebellion was actually for the good of the system, if not of the universe. By the time his plans had developed to the point of disillusionment, no doubt he had gone too far for his original and mischief-making pride to permit him to stop. At some point in this experience, he became insincere, and evil evolved into deliberate and willful sin. That this happened is proved by the subsequent conduct of this brilliant executive. He was long offered opportunity for repentance, but only some of his subordinates ever accepted the proffered mercy. The faithful God of Adentia, on the request of the Constellation Fathers, in person presented the plan of Michael for the saving of these flagrant rebels. but always was the mercy of the Creator Son rejected, and rejected with increasing contempt and disdain.
So the faithful of days is the Trinity representative again, right? Okay, and they counseled Michael on the proper procedure to offer them mercy, right? Because even the faithful of days, even the representative of the Trinity that were here did not want to see him lost, right? So they did everything they possibly could to bring him around, but it's just like human, if you think about it, it's like human beings. When you start to tell yourself a lie, over a period of time, that lie becomes reality to you, okay? So you tell it over and over and over and over again, and sooner or later, you yourself start to believe the lie to the point where you think it really is true or it really happened. You see what I'm saying? And they found this with all sorts of psychological studies and things like that. And even in the military, when men come back from battle and war and stuff like that, they tell stories of what happened. And some of them aren't true and some of them are, but they start to believe they really were true because they told the lie over and over and over and over and over again. And we know that's a fact. But Lucifer did the same thing. He started to tell himself this self-deception or this lie, and over a period of time it got so bad that he couldn't go back anymore. His pride wouldn't let him go back anymore.
Well, they're habitual liars, and when you see various court cases, you see some people that lie after another, and it's so obvious what they're doing.
Yeah, and the more they do it, the easier it becomes too. Right? Okay, and eventually it goes into willful sin. You know it's wrong, but you do it anyway. Right? Okay. Millie, would you take the first paragraph of the Lucifer Manifesto?
Number 3, the Lucifer Manifesto. Whatever the early origins of trouble in the hearts of Lucifer and Satan, the final outbreak took form as the Lucifer Declaration of Liberty. The cause of the rebels was stated under 3 heads.
Would you take the first one, please, Millie?
Number 1, the reality of the Universal Father. Lucifer charged that the Universal Father did not really exist, that physical gravity and space energy were inherent in the universe, and that the Father was a myth invented by the Paradise Sons to enable them to maintain the rule of the universes in the Father's name. He denied the personality was a gift of the Universal Father. He even intimated that the Finalators were in collusion with the Paradise Sons to foist fraud upon all creation, since they never brought back a very clear-cut idea of the Father's actual personality as it is discernible on Paradise. He traded on reverence as veiled attack. It was this veiled, he traded on reverence as, ignorance. Got it. Okay, I lost my place. He traded on reverence as ignorance. The charge was sweeping, terrible, and blasphemous. It was this veiled attack upon the Finalators that no doubt influenced the ascendant citizens then on Jerusalem to stand firm and remain steadfast in resistance to all the rebels' proposals.
Okay, this is the first one, right? Thing I want to bring out in this, notice that the ascendant citizens, these are fused adjuster citizens, right? Not a single one of them were lost during the rebellion.
Hey, Roger.
Yeah.
What are they talking about when they say that physical gravity and space energy were inherent in the universe? So that's basically his case against the Universal Father.
That's right. This is the same thing.
So physical gravity and space energy. Can you explain those two?
Yeah, this is the same thing that Stephen Hawking had been trying to propose for years and years. That the universe was started with a big bang, okay? And everything's going out, and it keeps going out, and basically what he's saying here is that space and what's happening in the universe is basically happens on its own. It has no beginning, it has no end, and it has no cause, okay? And Stephen Hawking has been saying the same thing to the scientific community for years.
And we know that's not true because the source of all gravity would be the eternal isle of paradise.
That's right. That's exactly right.
He's
And
also refuted that too.
yeah, and we
the
also
absolute machine.
we also know about space respiration. They've explained these things to us and explained how things work as much as they possibly can through our pea brains that we have as humans. But the real slap in the face is not whether this is true or not. The real slap in the face is the reality of the Father himself, the first cause of all existence and our cause of personality. And then we go on down through this paragraph and we realize the ascendant citizens, those who have that Father fragment, that little bit of universal Father, not a single one of them would join the rebellion. Why? Because they were fused beings with that fragment of God the Father, and it would not allow them to even consider rebelling against their own source. Right?
And hey, Roger, how do they use that word again? Space energy?
Space energy says it was inherent in the universe. In other words, it developed on its own in the universe. It had no controller.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
So there was no divine order.
There was no divine order of anything. That's what he's saying.
So Roger, after eons of the finalators coming back from the Isle of Paradise,
Right.
and not bringing back a clear-cut idea of the Father's personality, from that, he gathered that there is no.
That's right. He just made the assumption, and they did this out of reverence, not because they could explain. You know, how do you explain the most magnificent experience of your existence? You know, are there words to explain that? I'm not sure.
But we know, Roger, that the source of the universal Father's personality and character was demonstrated by Michael and Abaddon.
That's right. That's right.
And then one other thing here, he denied that personality was a gift of the universal Father.
That's right.
So I wonder where he thought personality came from.
Well, it must come from the same place that he thinks the Creator Sons come from, because according to him, he believed that the Creator Sons were his creator, but he has no explanation as where they came from. Right?
But we read, Roger, that the bestower of personality is by the universal Father only.
That's right. That's right. It is. Let's keep going. Number 2.
It makes us very happy to be ascending, since his citizens were the ones who stood firm and remained steadfast.
That's right.
By being in this position, we learn more.
We do, and that's the experience, Millie. That's why experiential beings stick with the pathway too.
That's why we're here.
That's right. That's right. Tim, would you take up the next one, number 2?
Number 2, the universe government of the Creator Son. Michael, Lucifer contended that the local systems should be autonomous.
Autonomous.
What's that again?
Autonomous.
Autonomous.
Yeah.
He protested against the right of Michael, the Creator Son, to assume sovereignty of Nebadon in the name of a theoretical Paradise Father, and require all personalities to acknowledge allegiance to this unseen Father. He asserted that the whole plan of worship was a clever scheme to aggrandize the Paradise Sons. He was willing to acknowledge Michael as his creator Father, but not as his God and his rightful ruler.
Now, does this make any sense to y'all? That you could say, well, this part I believe, but this part I don't. You know, it's a whole package deal. You know, I mean, any way you look at it, it kind of reminds me of, you know, they talk about this later as the wars in heaven, and it kind of reminds me of Star Wars. You know, the Force be with you, you know, type thing. You know, you either believe in the Force or you don't. So you either believe in God the Father or you don't. But how do all these other beings come into existence without any first cause? It makes no sense.
Hey, Roger, how do they use the word worship according to the Urantia papers?
That worship is only given to the universal Father. You can worship through the Creator sons, but that worship is passed on to the Father. And that is the recognition of the greatness and the deity of God the Father. In other words, who He is as the first source and center. It's like an awe of the universal Father. But only the universal Father is to be worshipped. You can worship Him through the Creator sons, but it eventually goes back to the universal Father.
Tim, when I first started reading this book, that word really tripped me up. Because, as Roger says, you only worship the Father. So I went around asking people, what is worship? You drive around town and you see all these churches that say, worship with us, worship with us.
Yeah.
What is worship? And I've come to understand worship is doing the Father's will.
It is.
Wonderful. And I know that worship also asks of nothing like prayer.
It doesn't. It's not prayer, and it's a exchange of contact between an individual and its first source creator.
Is it like praising too? Like you're just, oh Father, oh you're so wonderful, oh we love you, kind of like that?
No, praise is different than worship. Praise is for the benefit of the Father and the individual. It's not for the benefit of the group. When it becomes worship together, then it turns into prayer or to praise. Okay, and that's why, like Millie said, all these signs going around says, "Come worship with us." Most churches, when you go into them, don't spend any time whatsoever actually worshiping God. They talk about what's going on in the church, they pray together, they sing together, they praise together, but they never stop long enough to have worship between the individual and the Father. Okay?
I have to say one thing, Roger. One of the things that I truly, truly enjoy about, being a Catholic as a young girl until my early 20s is that the Catholic Church does leave time for worship. And when I was growing up, you could go into the church anytime and you could sit quietly and just worship God. You could pray, and so that's why I've always felt honored, to have been raised in the Catholic Church. I obviously am not a Catholic anymore, but I still have reverence, for God through my experience in the Catholic Church.
And isn't that always, Diane, when that happens, it's always between one individual and the Father, too. When you go into a Catholic church to pray, it's a communication between the worshiper and God the Father. It's a place to go do that, right? And it's one of the few places in the few churches, period, that's even allowed, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Hey Roger, you can read about more on worship, true worship, paper 5, section 3.
By the way, we have on our website, on the front page under, it says Roger section, there's a guide for worship and wisdom that you can go to that page. And it's just an exercise for your own worship time. So, anyway.
Roger, I would like to comment.
Yeah.
Thinking about what Diane said there, you don't need to go to a church building to worship.
You don't.
You can worship the Father
anywhere, anytime.
Especially in nature.
That's right.
And that's true.
That's true. But it's nice to have
That is true.
It's nice to have a location and a building to be able to do that. Even in the Urantia book, it talks about temples and things like that are created just for worshiping the Father.
But it's nice to have a place of gathering too.
It is. It's nice to get together and share concepts with friends.
A fellowship building is a good place for worship.
It is.
It sets the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You can set a place for atmosphere in your own home, a particular chair with particular things around it.
Yeah.
Set a quiet corner somewhere in your own house. But I particularly like what Roger came back from when you went to that meeting and you came back with what you did in prayer.
Yes.
You prayed to Jesus and you also spent time in the quiet. Where
we had an exercise for months.
You talk out and then you shut up and listen.
Yeah.
People don't understand that.
Kind of like meditation, Roger?
Kind of like meditation, and that's what it's geared towards. It's geared between meditation and relaxing oneself to the point where you're open to the concepts and the communication of the adjuster to the Father and from the adjuster to you. And that's what it's meant to do. It allows you to stop long enough in your life. That's all it's meant to do, is to allow that communication to happen.
So you're just silencing all the chaos within yourself. And
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's been many great religious leaders that have proposed this same concept that we came back with, and we did it in my home for about 6 or 8 months. And but the way this started was a Catholic priest actually started it, the worship and wisdom thing, and it's geared after that particular way to get it started, really. And it works well, but you can do it at home, you can do it anytime, anywhere, wherever you are, except for driving, because you need to have your full consciousness of driving. You know? Not a good idea, right?
It's not while I'm on the road.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to number 2. Tom, or Tim, I think you were up.
I just read
Oh, did you? Did
number
you just...
2, the universe government of the Creator's Son.
I'm sorry. Let's
That's
move,
okay.
move on. I got so tied up there. Okay, Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
Sure. Most bitterly did he attack the right of the ancients of days. Foreign potentates to interfere in the affairs of the local systems and universes. Their rulers he denounced, these rulers he denounced as tyrants and usurpers. He exhorted his followers to believe that none of these rulers could do aught to interfere with the operation of complete home rule if men and angels only had the courage to assert themselves and boldly claim their rights.
I bet he had a different opinion when they came to take him to the prison world. Yeah.
What does the
Anyway,
word usurper mean?
usurper, in other words, they interfere,
Okay.
put their will over your will, basically.
And hey, Roger, when they talk about foreign potentates, what
Yes.
does that mean?
That
And they
means
have like a dash mark.
that
referring to the
means-
ancients of days.
that means they're rulers from afar. They live in another universe, and yet they rule over the local universe.
And thank you, Einstein.
Okay. That's what that means. Okay, and the funny thing about it, he said he attacked the right of the ancients of days. So obviously he is acknowledging the ancients of days, and they are what? One of the 7 breakdowns of deity, right? It's funny how he believes in all these other deities all the way down, and yet he doesn't believe in God the Father. You know, this is just, like I said, it's cosmic insanity. The other thing is this: because of the ancients of days are the only ones to make decisions about eternal life, whether you continue on, and adjudicate you, that is part of what he's talking about. He did not want to give the ancients of days the right of adjudication of all the beings in his domain, right? So he wanted to step in and make the decisions on him by himself. Okay?
But he will face the ancients of days.
Oh yeah, he's going to have to stand before him. You look at it. You know, all the
I was going to
rebels.
say, guess who he's going to be standing in front of?
Yeah. All right.
Little awakening there.
Dustin, would you take the next one?
Sure. He contended that the executioners of the ancients of days could be barred from functioning in the local systems if the native beings would only assert their independence. He maintained that immortality was inherent in the system personalities, that resurrection was natural and automatic, and that all beings would live eternally except for the arbitrary and unjust acts of the executioners of the ancients of days.
Now we could spend the rest of the night on this paragraph if I had that time.
Yes, he was, yeah.
Because of what? Okay? We're talking about first of all, him maintaining that immortality was inherent in the system personality. And I've heard this in other Urantia groups over and over again, that they believe that everybody goes on, everybody makes it, regardless of what you do in this life. Okay? And that's basically what Lucifer is saying. So when you say that, you're taking the position of Lucifer. I just wanted to say that right out out front. It usurps the authority of the Ancients of Days when you say that. Because of what? When you die on this planet, if they find nothing salvageable about you, and this is the Ancients of Days we're talking about, if they find nothing salvageable about you, you do not wake up on the mansion worlds. Okay? It says that in several places in this book, and I don't know how in the world people miss it, but they do. So basically, what he's saying in this paragraph is the exact same thing people keep trying to tell everybody, that when you die, regardless of what you do on this planet, you're going to wake up on the mansion worlds.
And that's completely false.
It's thinking about there's some good in everybody.
That's right. But
Find some good somewhere. He might have to go to remedial school.
But
just
the
to get
problem,
to ancient worlds.
the problem with the statement is this, Millie. What you do is you cut out the job of adjudication of the Ancients of Days when you say that. Okay? And they have a purpose. Everything in the universe has a purpose. There's reasons that some beings do not wake up on the mansion world. Number one, there are beings out there that their whole life is controlled by ego and evil. There are evil people in the world, and people don't want to believe that. They think that everybody is just okay, and it's just okay. But it's not. It says at the end of this paper, or the next one of the two, it flat out says the wages of sin is death. And they're not talking about dying as a human. They're talking about permanent death where you're wiped out from the universe. And that's what he's contending here in this paragraph, that if it wasn't for the executioners of the Ancient of Days, he's saying they should be debarred from functioning in the local systems. Okay? In other words, what he's saying is that he wants to cut out the authority completely of the Ancients of Days and their executioners from coming and picking up these beings and annihilating them. That's what he's saying here.
That was well said, Roger. That was excellent.
Yeah, that was.
Even Lucifer had some good in him to begin with.
And he was given, and he still is given, multiple opportunity to repent.
And that's why they pretty much let the rebellion run its course. They had to.
Yeah, they had to, because if they fought the rebellion on the level where they just wiped everybody out, which they could do, being the Ancients of
And
Days.
it's interfering with free will too, correct?
It would be interfering with free will, and even they will not allow themselves to do that. Okay?
So when they say the orgy of darkness, what are they talking about? It sounds something sexual.
Well, they're talking about enticing unknowing or unintelligent beings that's not got enough experience to make decisions into following a pathway that will end in their own destruction. That's what they're talking about there. The orgy of darkness. In other words, because of these beings like Lucifer and the beings that followed him, convincing even the children on the Father's mansion worlds to follow them into rebellion, they're actually putting them into a situation where their life could end permanently. And that's what they're talking about. So this is worse than a physical battle on a world, because when we die, go into battle and die on this world, we wake up on the mansion world. We start again. But these beings, if they follow Lucifer into darkness, into rebellion, eventually that life force that makes them who they are will be removed, and they will cease to exist. So that's a death permanent, not a death like a transition, but it's a permanent death. They will cease to exist, and they won't wake up again.
So before every will creature who pretty much dies, it's the Ancients of Days that makes that decision before they ascend to the magical worlds.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going. I get too bogged down on this. Do you see the importance of this paragraph, though?
Yeah, that was well said.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm up next. What? The attack upon the universal plan of ascendant mortal training, Lucifer maintained that far too much time and energy were expended upon the scheme of so thoroughly training ascendant mortals in the principles of universe administration, principles which he alleged were unethical and unsound. He protested against the age-long program for the preparing of mortals of space for some unknown destiny and pointed to the presence of the finaliter cores on Jerusalem as proof that these mortals had spent ages of preparation for some destiny of pure fiction. With derision, he pointed out that the finaliters had encountered a destiny no more glorious than to be returned to humble spheres similar to those of their origin. He intimated that they had been debauched by overmuch discipline and prolonged training, and that they were in reality traitors to their mortal fellows, since they were now cooperating with the scheme of enslaving all creation to the fictions of the mythical and eternal destiny for ascending mortals. He advocated that ascenders should enjoy the liberty of individual self-determination. He challenged and condemned the entire plan of mortal ascension as sponsored by the sons of God and supported by the infinite spirit. So he's saying that the 4 outer space levels really weren't out there. That's what he's saying, isn't he? Because we know the future of the finaliters is where? In the outer space levels. Why do you think they train ascenders so adamantly about universe administration and principles?
To get the planet started?
To get the planets in the outer space levels
The 4 outer
started.
space levels.
Right. We're being trained for the evolution of the Supreme. When the Supreme comes into full fruition, some of us will be released to go into the outer space levels. This is what's proposed. Outer space levels, and start populating new universes, new planets, new system capitals, the whole 9 yards. Okay? So he's saying all this plan is fantasy. Okay?
So basically, he's just trying to say that all your finaliter training that you go through is ignorance because the fourth outer space levels don't even exist in the first place.
That's what he's saying, but he's going even a step further. He's saying that the finaliters, by the time they meet God, get up to God the Father, they've already realized this, and they just can't come back and sponsor the same lies that the Creator Sons is saying. That's what he's saying.
So the Paradise Sons and the Infinite Spirit support the training of the finaliters and their training out in the 4 outer space.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Now, interesting question comes up here for me. If he acknowledges the Infinite Spirit, which is part of the Trinity, right? And he acknowledges the faithful days, and the union of days, all the orders of days, which are all from where? The Trinity, right? So if he acknowledges that there's Creator Sons, and he acknowledges that there's an Infinite Spirit, why would there not be a Universal Father and Eternal Son, right? Where are these Trinity origin beings coming from, right?
Well, my question is too, if he acknowledged that the eternal Isle of Paradise existed, why couldn't he acknowledge that the Universal Father and, pretty much Eternal Son and the Infinite Spirit exist?
It's a good question.
He couldn't get there?
Yeah, right now in this paragraph he's saying that they're supported by Infinite Spirit, so obviously he believes in the Infinite Spirit, doesn't he? How can you believe in the Infinite Spirit and not believe in the Universal Father and the Eternal Son? It doesn't make sense, right?
But there's a truth that we're going to be eventually on the eternal island of paradise.
That's right. Eventually. Okay. Diane, would you take the last paragraph there? Oops.
The last of them. And it was with such a declaration of liberty that Lucifer launched his orgy of darkness and death.
Now, do y'all understand why it's the orgy of darkness and death now? He's putting
Because of his influence
Yeah.
on helpless
beings, that's right. He's putting them all in darkness instead of enlightening them, and he's causing their death because he's putting them in line for permanent judgment of being destroyed. Okay?
So it's kind of like drug dealers giving drugs to kids or children
Yeah,
in reference.
yeah. Yeah.
And he's pretty much saying, hey, do what you want.
Do what you want. It's all okay. And it's not all okay, right? All right. Diane, why don't you take the first paragraph and the next one too, because that one is really short.
Outbreak of the rebellion. The Lucifer Manifesto was issued at the annual conclave of Satania on the Sea of Glass, in the presence of the assembled host of Jerusalem, on the last day of the year, about 200,000 years ago, Urantia time. Satan proclaimed that worship could be accorded the universal forces, physical, intellectual, and spiritual, but that allegiance could be acknowledged only to the actual and present ruler, Lucifer, the friend of men and angels, and the God of liberty.
Y'all see the problem here?
Yeah, he set himself up as God.
He set himself up as God, right? The
Hey,
God.
Roger, I don't understand when it says the universal forces, physical, intellectual, and spiritual.
He's saying there that there's a universal forces out there. All the circuits of the 7 super universe are all naturally created. Universal forces, they don't have any intellectual control by any deity. That they just happen. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Roger.
That's what he's saying there. And that they can only worship him. Right? Who is supposed to be the friend of angels and the God of liberty. Yeah,
So
okay.
he's delusional and he is insane. God.
Yeah, he's cosmically insane. That's why I keep saying that.
And that's because he keeps on sinning, correct?
Yeah, he's following his own stupidity into darkness. Now this is a picture of Jerusalem on the Sea of Glass, and we see that Gabriel's there present and the celestial host of angels, but also the 37 planetary princes that went into rebellion, and all the other beings below them that rebelled, including the material sons and daughters, primary midwayers, transport seraphim, cherubim, sanobim, Morancha cherubim, and the Morancha sanobim. And this is where this is 200,000 years ago at the annual conclave on Jerusalem where this happened. And you'll notice there's a banner up there. It's got a white background with a red circle with one red dot, right?
Thank God.
And I found out something really interesting by accident. There is an Indian tribe that has that same symbol. So,
Oh, no.
in Alaska. Yeah.
In Alaska.
Yeah, in Alaska. I bought a hat back from Alaska and I saw the symbol on it and I thought, wait a minute, I've seen that before.
The exact same symbol, Roger?
Exact same
Red
symbol.
and brown?
Yeah, it was white with a red circle and a black dot in the middle.
Oh, no.
So I'm sure they probably, either they don't know or they're a remnant of this rebellion. Who's to say? So anyway.
Roger, I'm totally surprised that so many personalities, so many beings followed this manifestation, that they agreed with him
Well,
on
I
these
am
facts.
I am
I'm totally
too
overwhelmed.
I am too, Rodney. But remember, it's easy to deceive people, right? It's easy to deceive probably any types of beings that are ascendant type beings or created type beings, right? It's not till we get into the upper level of the spirit type beings that we become a little more wise and sophistry proof, really, is what they say. So,
Plus, he had that brilliance of personality.
yeah.
And like Diane said, charisma, too.
That's right.
And they bought it.
Okay, Millie, would you take the next one, please?
Yes, comment I do have after the end of the last section before number 4. Page 1234. It's a discussion of how you get eliminated.
Oh,
How they, you don't have personality, you don't have life force, you don't have anything. But page 1234 talks about
page
this.
134.
It's who keeps track of our souls.
Right. That's a good reference to keep.
It's in the personality survival section.
Okay. All right.
Self-assertion was the battle cry of the Lucifer rebellion. One of his chief arguments was that if self-government was good and right for the Melchizedeks and other groups, it was equally good for all orders of intelligence. He was bold and persistent in the advocacy of the equality of mind and the brotherhood of intelligence. He maintained that all government should be limited to the local planets and their voluntary confederation into the local systems. All other supervision he disallowed. He promised military princes that they should rule the worlds as supreme executives. He denounced the location of legislative activities on the Constellation headquarters and the conduct of the judicial affairs of the universe capital. He contended that all these functions of government should be concentrated on the system capital and proceeded to set up his own legislative assembly and organize his own tribunal under the jurisdiction of Satan. And he directed that the princes on the apostolic worlds do the same.
It kind of sounds like Darth Vader in Star Wars, doesn't it? I mean, he wants to rule the universes, and only he has all the answers, right? All right. Me. It's the me syndrome, right? We talked about this about 3 or 4 years ago when we talked about this paper. Okay, so let's kind of break this down a little bit. Because the Melchizedeks are self-ruling, he feels that all orders of local universe created administration should all be self-ruling, even though they're not ready for that yet. Okay? And he thinks that all decisions should be voluntary confederation to the local systems. Okay, so this is why it kind of sounds like Star Wars. They all want to be self-contained and rule their own worlds and not have anybody help them out with anything. Okay? Except for the fact that he wants everybody to report back to Satan, who is his jurisdiction over these planets, right? And he basically directed all the planetary princes on all 37 worlds that went into rebellion to do the same thing, So, it's the me syndrome all over again, right? The interesting part I find about this is he uses the quality of mind and the brotherhood of intelligence. It sounds like they don't have a bit of intelligence to me, or they wouldn't be doing this, right? Okay. Tim, would you take the next one?
The entire administrative cabinet of Lucifer went over in a body and were sworn in publicly as the officers of the administration of the new head of the liberated worlds and systems.
Okay, do y'all understand this? They are on Jerusalem, okay? So they set up their own administrative cabinet on Jerusalem, and all of the Lucifer administration and the 37 planets and their representatives all went over to this new administrative cabinet at the same time. Okay? So they have claimed an area on Jerusalem to set up their administration to take care of their universes. Okay?
So, hey Roger, the word administrative would be that whole group of people in that area, like you just said?
Yeah, it's exactly right. Remember that they are on the Mount of God, controlling this whole system, right? So they basically set up a whole new administration on the Mount of God instead of on the constellation head. Okay? So they're disallowing the constellation leadership completely, and they're going to take it over from Jerusalem, is what he's saying. So this really is a planetary war, is what he's talking about, and a system war. All right. So let's go on, Rodney. Would you take
Roger, you said that he took them all, they went to the side to self-administer their own universes. I think you meant their own planets.
Planets, yeah, that's what I meant. It was
Yeah,
their own
this
planets.
was all, and then,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, while there had been 2 previous rebellions in Nebadon, they were in distant constellations. Lucifer held that these insurrections were unsuccessful because the majority of the intelligences failed to follow their leaders. He contended that majorities rule, that mind is infallible. The freedom allowed him by the universe rulers apparently sustained many of his nefarious contentions. He defied all his superiors, yet they apparently took no note of his doings. He was given a free hand to prosecute his seductive plan without let or hindrance.
So he took the attitude of Michael and Gabriel of non-interference to let this rebellion run its course, right, as them not taking any action. Okay? And so that he claimed that he was right because he felt that majorities ruled, and that if everybody followed him and followed their leaders with him, then nothing would happen to them. Right? And boy, is he wrong.
Hey, Roger, what does he mean when he says mind is infallible?
He's saying that his own mind of reason is infallible. In other words, he could not make a mistake because he felt like he was perfect. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. And here we are stupid humans, and we already figured out that that was not the case.
We're worms and we figure that.
That's right. Dustin, would you take the next one, please, sir?
All the merciful delays of justice Lucifer pointed to as evidence of the inability of the government of the Paradise Sons to stop the rebellion. He would openly defy and arrogantly challenge Michael, Emmanuel, and the Ancients of Days, and then point to the fact that no action ensued as positive evidence of the impotency of the universe and the super-universe governments.
In other words, they have no ability to take action, right? But he found out different, didn't he, on Pentecost?
That's just what he thought. It wasn't what was.
That's right. Gabriel was personally present throughout all these disloyal proceedings and only announced that he would, in due time, speak for Michael, and that all beings would be left free and unmolested in their choice, that the government of the sons for the Father desired only that loyalty and devotion which was voluntary, wholehearted, and sophistry-proof. In other words, they would not interfere until all beings involved had made their decision which direction they wanted to go. Okay, and this is another picture of the Sea of Glass during this Lucifer manifesto when they presented it to all the beings on the Sea of Glass. All right. Diane, would you take the next one?
Lucifer was permitted fully to establish and thoroughly to organize his rebel government before Gabriel made any effort to contest the right of succession or to counterwork the rebel propaganda. But the Constellation Fathers immediately confined the action of these disloyal personalities to the system of Satania. Nevertheless, the period of delay was a time of great trial and testing to the loyal beings of all Satania. All was chaotic for a few years, and there was great confusion on the mansion worlds.
So this just caused chaos throughout all the mansion worlds and system headquarters, right?
why did it cause confusion on dimension worlds?
Because you had two factions of beings, one who wanted to follow the will of the Father and the other that did not. Okay? So all those people like the Mansion World teachers and things like that that went into rebellion was trying to teach the people on the Mansion World wrong concepts. Okay? So you had two concepts being taught at the same time. One in the belief of the Father and the belief in the ascension plan, and the other taught that Lucifer's way of self-assertion and ego and what they called freedom, which actually was not freedom, was the better way. So this went on for quite some time.
I did not realize that it had infected the teachers on the Mansion Worlds.
Oh yeah, the teachers, the Morancha teachers were involved. Yeah, quite. There was almost beings on every level affected, except for the Lanonandek sons. They weren't affected, and certain groups of angels were not affected because they refused to participate. So it's kind of interesting.
I have a note here on paper 120. Paper 120 is the start of the fourth section of this book, and I'm not sure why I have that note here, but it's there, and I'm next. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 5, nature of the conflict. Upon the outbreak of the Satania rebellion, Michael took counsel of his paradise brother Emmanuel. Following this momentous conference, Michael announced that he would pursue the same policy which had characterized his dealing with similar upheavals in the past, an attitude, oh dear, of non-interference.
So he dealt with this twice before, and he refused to interfere. He let the rebellion run its course, and every being make their decisions, and then they were all judged by the Ancients of Days. So this had already happened twice before. So he did the same thing. He was going to do the same thing again. And he did this with the Council of Emmanuel, which is the Union of Days, and that's the Paradise Trinity representation, right? Okay. Tim, would you take the next one?
At the time of this rebellion, and the two which preceded it, there were no absolute and personal sovereign authority in the universe of Nebadon. Michael ruled by divine right as vicegerent of the universal Father, but not yet in his own personal right. He had not completed his bestowal career. He had not yet been vested with all power in heaven and on earth.
Okay, and that did not happen till when? When he finished his bestowal here on the planet, right?
When he was baptized,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, basically. Okay.
He could have gone home after that.
Yeah, he
did
really
not have to
could.
stay and
He
teach.
chose to stay, that's right. Rodney, take the next one, please.
From the outbreak of the rebellion to the day of his enthronement as sovereign ruler of Nebadon, Michael never interfered with the rebel forces of Lucifer. They weren't allowed to run a free course for almost 200,000 years of Urantia time. Christ Michael now has ample power and authority to deal promptly, even summarily, with such outbreaks of disloyalty. But we doubt that this sovereign authority would lead him to act differently if another such upheaval should occur.
Okay, so he has been vested as sovereign of our local universe with all power and authority. What does that mean? That means as our creator, he could summarily decide to disallow all the rebellion with all these beings, and the Ancients of Days would step in and annihilate all of them. You got that? But he chose not to do that. He chose not to do that to allow every being to make their own personal decision, and then he even allows mercy to those that make the wrong decisions starting out.
That's a lot of mercy.
That's a lot of mercy. That's a lot of love of the Father for his creation, right? That's the only reason you can see why this would happen. Okay, Dustin, would you take the next one?
Since Michael elected to remain aloof from the actual warfare of the Lucifer rebellion, Gabriel called his personal staff together on Edentia and, in council with the Most Highs, elected to assume command of the loyal host of Satania. Michael remained on Salvington while Gabriel proceeded to Jerusalem and establishing himself on the sphere dedicated to the Father, the same universal Father, whose personality Lucifer and Satan had questioned. In the presence of the foregathered host of loyal personalities, he displayed the banner of Michael, the material emblem of the Trinity government of all creation, the three azure blue concentric circles on a white background.
Okay, so since Michael decided to stay in Salvington and remain aloof, Gabriel took his position up on the Father's world just outside of Jerusalem. Okay? And from there he commanded all the celestial hosts and the armies of the angels. Right?
And hey, Roger, the emblem just stands for the Paradise Trinity, correct?
Yes, the emblem stands for the Paradise Trinity, the center circle being the Father, the second being the Son, and the third being the Infinite Spirit, right?
Okay, thank you.
And on the Father's world, there was the same group of beings, right, as on Jerusalem. And these were the loyal beings that stayed loyal to God the Father. And that included the 582 Lenonondecs, which were planetary princes on the non-rebelling planets, right? And anything else I need to mention? That's pretty much it. And there's the banner of Michael, and the big G there is Gabriel. Okay?
Hey, Roger, I had a question.
Yeah.
If somebody actually believes in the Urantia papers as a revelation, but then yet goes astray, would you call that an act of disloyalty if they're talking bad about it? They've got websites. I mean, how would you judge that?
I would judge that as an error in judgment. That's what I would say they are in error. Until they actually start to rebel against God the Father, it would still not be considered rebellion, right? But you have to remember, it could be turned into being sinful because of their harm they do to the brothers and sisters out there that are discovering the book and becoming enlightened from the material in it, right?
Okay, thank you, Roger.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, who read? Dustin. Okay. The Lucifer emblem was a banner of white with one red circle in the center of which a black circle appeared, which we talked about that already. All right. Diane, would you take the next one, please?
There was war in heaven. Michael's commander and his angels fought against the dragon, Lucifer, Satan, and the apostate princes. And the dragon and his angels fought but prevailed not. This war in heaven was not a physical battle as such a conflict might be conceived on Urantia. In the early days of the struggle, Lucifer held forth continuously in the planetary amphitheater. Gabriel conducted an unceasing exposure of the rebels' sophistries from his headquarters taken up near at hand. The various personalities present on the sphere who were in doubt as to their attitude would journey back and forth between these discussions until they arrived at a final decision.
Okay, so y'all try to imagine this. You have Jerusalem as a planet, and then you have the planet of the Father, right, which is the first mansion world center sphere, right? Or it's the center sphere that the mansion worlds surround, I should say. Okay, so you would have beings from Jerusalem go listen to the discussions of Lucifer, and then they turn around and go to the discussions of Gabriel. And then they'd go back to Lucifer and then back to Gabriel until they came up with a final decisions of what they believe and who they were going to follow. And this went on for what? 200,000 years. Right? All right. Okay, so this is the early days of the struggle, and you see the Sea of Glass in Jerusalem, and then this would be the representation of the Father's world. So it's really interesting here on the Sea of Glass they talk about the Jerusalem broadcast receiving station on the Sea of, it is on the edge of the Sea of Glass, all right? And it's an enormous amphitheater constructed of scintillating materials largely unknown on Urantia, and seating over 5 billion beings, material, Morantia, and besides accommodating an innumerable spirit personalities. So these amphitheaters would hold 5 billion beings, okay? And there the Lucifer preponderance would give their speeches, and then they'd go over and listen to Gabriel on the Father's world, okay? Or somebody representing Gabriel on the Father's world. So this was a huge, huge thing that was going back and forth during this
So,
war.
hey, Roger, that's where they would have their debates, but how would they get over there? Would they fly over there?
They would fly over there, yeah, either by transport seraphim or some beings were capable of transporting themselves at this point, right?
Okay, thank you.
From the planets. But the transport seraphim actually came and landed to and from the Sea of Glass, there where it was, right? All right. Okay, Millie, would you take the next one?
Yes, it's something to think about.
Yeah.
This war in heaven was very terrible and very real, while displaying none of the barbarities so characteristic of physical warfare on the immature worlds. This conflict was far more deadly. Material life is in jeopardy in material combat, but the war in heaven was fought in terms of eternal life.
That's
Well,
the biggie.
That's a biggie.
That's a biggie, right. You made the wrong decision on this, you could lose your life eternally, right? All right. Let's see, it's 10 minutes till 9. I think we probably ought to stop here and take this up next week, y'all. We still got 3 more sections, I think. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes, but hey, Roger,
Yeah.
if they made the wrong decision, basically they're trying to say that you could give up your eternal life just based on your decision?
Yes. Yeah.
So you were annihilated completely if you joined the Lucifer Rebellion?
If you choose not to repent, eventually, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But it's, now keep in mind, Tim, too, but we make the same sort of decision in this life of survival, if you think about it. At some point in this life, we all make a survival decision. In other words, we want to go past this world, right? And that's just as important a decision as these beings were making about this rebellion, right? Because if we choose not to survive, we don't wake up on the mansion worlds.
Hey, Roger, what do they mean when they say, while displaying none of the barbarities so characteristic of physical warfare
Yeah,
in the immature worlds? What's that mean?
well, if you think about it, when we have war, we destroy each other's bodies and property and all that, and that's not the kind of warfare they were talking about. The warfare they were talking about was an intellectual, personal warfare of words between two groups, but the results of that is so much worse because of the loss of eternal life. That's what they're talking about.
Because you mentioned the word repent, and I didn't see that word in here.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, these beings that's rebelled have been offered mercy after mercy after mercy, and I'm sure if they changed their mind and decided they made the wrong decision and repented of what they did, they would probably be salvaged in some way.
That's
So,
correct. Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
So in heaven, they're really talking about the mansion world. They're not talking about the Isle of Paradise.
No, no. The rest of our 7th super universe was not involved. This was all in our local universe, right?
It's just
So-
interesting that they refer to it as heaven.
Yeah, yeah, they do. Well, that's probably because our concept of heaven is, they told us over and over, is probably the first mansion world, you know. Or it could also be when a planet reaches light and life. They said that's what we would consider heaven also. So, Alright, so we're done for tonight, and we'll take it up from section 6, a loyal seraphic commander, next time. And then we're going to move right into the problems of the Lucifer rebellion, which is 54. That's very good. Okay. Have y'all enjoyed this tonight, okay?
I had a wonderful time.
Good.
with everybody here tonight.
Good. Millie, would you like to close us in prayer tonight?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather together and again study your revelation. Help us to take it in, to live it, to own it, to use it. We thank you for it. We thank you in the name of Christ Michael, ruler of Nebadon. Amen.
Amen. And at home, thank you for joining us. Please come see us again. We'll see you next time, hopefully.